Did you know that the animals went into Noah's ark 2 by 2? You did? They didn't. Find out what the Bible really says as we study Genesis chapter 7. I'm glad you've been able to join me again today. Today we'll be looking at Genesis 7, which has 24 verses. The flood story continues. Now, the last observation that we made yesterday was that Noah did everything that God asked of him. But there seems to be a conflict and a contradiction with what God said in Genesis 6 compared to what he now says in Genesis 7. God had said, "And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive." God's instruction is clear. Noah, I need you to get 2 of each animals. Not 1, but 2. Not 3, but 2. 2 of each animal. And just so we're clear, make sure one is a male and the other is a female. That's what God had said. But now in chapter 7, he says, "Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female. And of beasts that are not clean, by 2, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by 7s, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth." Now, what's up with saying one thing in one chapter and another thing in the next chapter? I'm glad you've asked. Do you remember how in the first chapter of Genesis, God had created everything, including, in verse 26, man in his own image? But then in the second chapter of Genesis, we discover that God formed man from the dust of the ground and then made woman in verse 22 from Adam's rib. There's no contradiction between these two creation stories. Chapter 1 gives us the big picture that God created everything. Then chapter 2 provides us with the details of that same picture. That's the pattern and principle at play here at the beginning of this flood story. First, we see the big picture that God is saving not only Noah and his family, but all the animals which he had created. The fact that God stresses that there should be male and female reveals his intention to fill the earth again. The focus firstly is on repopulation. Then God gives Noah the details of having 7 pairs of every clean animal. And so the 2 chapters are not contradictory, but complementary. Notice how there's already a distinction between clean animals and unclean animals. 1 pair of unclean animals and 7 pairs of clean animals. Now, you don't need to be a scholar or a theologian to realize that the clean animals are going to multiply more rapidly. The distinction between clean and unclean and the surplus amount of clean over unclean may point to provisions being made, either for sacrifices to God or for food for Noah and his family to eat. We see both of these happening after the flood. And so Noah and his wife and their 3 sons and their wives enter the ark with all these animals. Can you imagine the stink and the stench, the smelliness and the noisiness? Oftentimes, it's not easy doing God's will, but we've already seen that it's disobedience to God that gets you into trouble. If there's anything that you should have learned up until now, is that obedience to God is best. This obedience is emphasized as what is stated in chapter 6 verse 22 is repeated in chapter 7 verse 5. "And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him." Now we have a beautiful picture of faith. For faith calls for us as Christians to follow God's word even when we don't fully understand it. We see Adam and Eve didn't do it, but Noah does do it. Perhaps you've heard it before being said that up until now it hadn't rained, so Noah had to have faith. Not only that it would rain, but that it would rain so much that it would flood, and that it would flood so much that the world would be cleansed. But there's something else which calls for Noah to trust God and demonstrate his faith. Now, it's not obvious to us at first, but it would have been apparent to Noah and his wife. Do you remember the genealogical record of Genesis 5, where we were told 5 things about each person? Firstly, their name. Secondly, their age when their first son was born. Thirdly, the name of that firstborn. Fourthly, the age the man lived after the firstborn son was born. And finally, the age when he died. Now, when you compute the information given to us concerning Noah, you'll discover from chapter 5 that Noah was 500 years old at the birth of his firstborn. In chapter 7, we see that he was 600 years old when the floods came. And sandwiched between these 2 chapters, we are told that God gave this flood warning 120 years in advance. So Noah would have been 480 years old when he received this message. He was childless, and his firstborn son wouldn't be born for another 20 years. When you compare Noah's age to others in the list, no one had to wait as long as Noah for the birth of their firstborn. But God promises in Genesis 6 verse 18, "But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you." Amazing. God foretold not only that Noah would have sons, but that his sons would have wives. The Bible records, by faith, Noah being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this, he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. And so Noah and his family are in the ark, together with all the animals. Day 1, nothing happens. Day 2, still nothing happens. And you may have been tempted to start doubting God's word. But put your faith in God, and you will see his faithfulness. After 7 days, that's 1 week, that's 168 hours, the rain falls down from above, and the fountains of the deep open and spring up from below. Notice how this is a reversal of creation. In creation, God separated the waters above from the waters that were below. But now in recreation, God is bringing it all together. And so it rains for 40 days and for 40 nights. The last verse of the chapter records, "The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. What happens after those 150 days? Find out tomorrow as we study Genesis chapter 8. But for now, it's goodbye from me and a good day to you. Thanks for watching. For all your queries and comments, questions and answers, observations, applications, reservations and consternations, you can leave them all in the comment section below. And don't forget, sharing is caring. So don't keep the Pastor B channel to yourself. Don't be selfish. Go and tell somebody. Admit it. You liked that, didn't you? Hit the thumbs up button. And don't forget to subscribe to the Pastor B YouTube channel. I don't want you to miss any content, so make sure that you leave